Advisory Committee today, Wednesday, August 28th, and acknowledge that the press and the public have been duly notified of the meeting in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act. I'd also like to, for full disclosure, I want everyone to be aware that we have a hard stop at 11:50. We have competing requirements for this room, and so we have to, if we don't have our business done, we'll pick our business up at the next meeting. First order of business is the approval of previous meeting minutes from May 15th. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
So moved.
Okay, any not mistakes, but any changes or additions that anyone feels we need to make? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Next item is financial statements, and Deborah Hamilton will lead us in that presentation.
Sure. I'm going to do a brief rundown of our preliminary numbers for FY24. The state ATAX did very well. We did 14% more in investments than the previous year. We're ending our fund balance at 17% more than projected. So that's the balance sheet. And we do have our revenue is 13% more than we budgeted. So the revenues are coming in, or did come in, higher than we anticipated. And these are, like I said, these are still preliminary numbers. And our expenses, we did approve some of the overage for FY24, but when we finished with June, there were some additional expenses that need to be approved because they were over what we anticipated. And those expenses are the funds that are paid out, the 30% to Charleston CVV, as well as the transfer to the IOP Marina for the 75% bond. It is budgeted at $250,070, but the actual expense was $250,391. So there's an overage of $321 that needs to be approved. As well as the tourism coordinator, those we budget $21,000 and it's over it came in, the actual number is $31,150, but all that is reimbursed by the CVV for that portion of the bill.
And the reason there's an increase, the budget was adopted last summer. January of this year, City Council approved wage adjustments associated with a wage and compensation study that the city did last year, and then all of those recommendations were implemented 1/1/24, so that's why there's a difference.
Okay.
On our monies received and monies paid schedule, you can see that we're 6% behind the prior year for monies received and 5% behind for monies paid to CVV. And that's what your schedule shows. For FY25, we are only 1 month in. And the only revenue that we've received is the interest from the investment account at $19,000. But we have about $30,000 in expenses. And so that's where that negative variance of $11,000 is coming from, because for the first month, we've spent more than we received.
It's a timing issue,
Yeah.
essentially,
So
when we receive those funds.
And that's all I have.
Do you need a motion to approve those overages?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And they're highlighted in your packet in red, so you can reference those in your motion.
And they have an asterisk beside the ones that are new, because we have approved some already.
Okay, so I make a motion that we approve those overages.
Second.
Any discussion, questions about those overages beyond what Deborah has explained? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Hey, Mike, did you vote yay or nay?
Yay.
Okay,
Yay.
thank you.
Okay, the next item is a discussion with the College of Charleston Office of Tourism Analysis regarding the development of a questionnaire that could be made available to property managers and hotels on the island to distribute to visitors to gain insight into where visitors are coming from and what would drive them to return. Kat, are you going to lead that, or Chris, or?
Chris, Chris and I have had a couple conversations after the last committee meeting, and you all recall we had a broad discussion about additional initiatives that we can work on with the CVB, and I believe it was Mike who brought up this idea of how are we seeking information from the folks that come and stay on the island, and how can we learn from them about initiatives that the city can pursue and implement that would drive them to come back. And that prompted a conversation about who would be the right group to help us develop that, understand what the goal would be of this initiative, and what results we can see. So Chris at that time had talked about the work that the CVB does with the College of Charleston's Office of Tourism and Analysis. So he's had initial conversations with them. I have too, and we just want to have a broader conversation with the committee again to understand what the goal would be. And what opportunities we have partnering with them for this initiative. So Chris, I'll let Chris introduce Melinda and Daniel from the College of Charleston's OTA and lead the discussion with the committee.
Wonderful. Thank you, Desiree. Good morning. Great to be back with you. Thanks for the invitation. Always nice to come across the bridge and ahead of the Labor Day traffic. So, we were excited to hear the interest last meeting as one of the new potential initiatives this year around the survey. And Mike, I know that you had particular interest here. And so Desiree and I have had some wonderful conversations and follow up to that. And you've heard me share before that we have a wonderful partner in the Office of Tourism Analysis at the College of Charleston on a lot of our research efforts. And so whereas some DMOs have to go out to national entities, we have tremendous expertise in our backyard, and beyond just the retro, research they do in terms of occupancy and all of those things that you hear about. They do a lot of work in terms of survey creation, facilitation, and truly have tremendous experience and background in this area. So we didn't have to look far, and that's a great thing. I'll also just reinforce that we, as the CVB, are really excited to support this initiative. So this is something that we are all in on, is if the committee decides that there's a path and collaboration with the city that you all feel works for the survey. So what we wanted to do is bring experts here today. So Dr. Gutentag, Daniel Gutentag, is the director of the Office of Tourism Analysis. One of the patients is the research coordinator for the OTA. They are far better versed in all of this work than I, to be fair. So I think if we can, I know there's a couple things they want to touch on from a process, kind of a general timeline perspective that sort of applies to any survey like this that we would be doing. The components around goal setting, et cetera, may be a little bit more of a conversation amongst the committee as well. Is that fair?
Yes, sir.
As far as that goes?
Yes, sir.
Sounds good. Well, with that, Daniel, can I invite you up?
Sure, yeah, do you want me to go up?
I think we're
I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
to be up at the.
Me talking or a conversation or, anyways, nice to meet you all. Again, I'm Dr. Gutentag, Associate Professor of Hospitality and Tourism Management at the college and Director of the Office of Tourism Analysis. So just a quick summary of the Office of Tourism Analysis, or OTA as we call it. It's essentially like a little market research data consultancy firm housed within the School of Business at the college, housed within the Hospitality and Tourism Department. I have the privilege of directing it. Melinda does all the hard work for me that I then get to take credit for. But we work closely with the CVB on a lot of their market research and data work. But we don't work exclusively with them. We do similar work with the CVB in Hilton Head. We work with all sorts of different major events in town, attractions throughout the Lowcountry and places like that. So we have a lot of background and expertise doing these sorts of surveys. We've been doing it with the CVB since, I don't even know, long before. So I've been at the college since 2017, and they've been doing it long before I arrived, so.
No, it's in 2006.
So, almost 20 years. Again, we handle a similar one in Hilton Head. We do one for the Wine and Food Festival, some other major events, and so on and so forth. So this is well within our wheelhouse. It's something we enjoy doing. And when Chris brought this up and we had the opportunity to chat with Desiree the other day, it's exciting to sort of have the opportunity to do sort of similar to what we do throughout the destination, but a little bit more focused on what you guys are interested in. And as Chris said, normally if you all were to reach out to us on your own, we would say, okay, that's great, we'd love to work with you. Now let's talk about sort of what you're interested in, and then we'll write up a contract, and essentially you would pay us for the work. That's sort of how we operate. But, this sort of goes between your relationship with the CVB. My understanding is they've said, hey, sort of in our work with the CVB, we have things that we do every year, and then we have just sort of some flexibility to add in some other things because they know that every year there's going to be some random projects that come up, some bigger or smaller. This is obviously a larger one. So of course, we'd be happy to do it if it's of interest for the CVB, and Chris said absolutely, that's what they'd like to do. So we said, all right, well, let's start discussing the opportunities. So I think that's a summary of sort of who we are and what we do. I don't know if you guys have any questions about that. Sort of, I came with some comments, but also some questions about sort of moving forward and what you guys might want out of this. Should I go ahead and start with that?
I have a question.
Sure.
Dr. Bin. I can't barely see you, but I can hear you well. I would be interested in reviewing and having the opportunity to review any what I call baseline data you have on overall the last 3 years or whatever, visitors to Charleston in general and to IOP. Do you have a baseline so we can look for trends, maybe in changes in the last year, or as we get the data going forward, we can make better recommendations to council based on the information you're able to provide to us?
Sure. So in terms of for the destination as a whole, which when we talk about the destination, we're referring to Charleston County. So we have a report we can share practically immediately right after this that looks at our annual estimate for the visitor count and economic impact and some other things like that. And that report has numbers going back several years. So that's something we create that's very easy.
Does it break out visitors to the Isle of Palms by chance?
Yeah, so that's where I was going. No, it doesn't. So that's obviously trickier. Whenever we do these, of course, it's an estimate. And doing it for Isle of Palms is, as we get into a more granular, it becomes a little bit trickier. We don't do that traditionally. What we can do is look at some data sources we have and certainly pull out trends.
What I think would be helpful for me is if you could take that overall base for Charleston County and then using whatever tools or instruments you have, even if it's anecdotally, helping us establish that baseline now until we are able to get a deeper dive and more feedback and detailed information on the visitors to IOP. Could you do that?
Was there something you wanted to say?
Yeah, I want to make sure, first and foremost, we do quarterly provide an update to the city, which we can give you, dating back to post-COVID, the run, I think that's 3 years now worth of data that we can provide you those quarterly reports, Mike, and anyone else on the committee who would like to see all of that history. Within those, one of the nuances council has heard from us, it's impossible to get, we want to be clear, to the hotel level on the island because there aren't enough hotels to create a sample size that is broken out on its own. The same thing exists in Kiowa. But what we can, Mike, is on the vacation rental data. So when you get these reports, I just wanted to set the stage that that's why we lean in so much to the vacation rental data, because that's where we do have IOP specificity.
I like that part, and I know there were some challenges maybe getting the Wild Dunes information. Hopefully that can be corrected, or we can work it out, because they are so important. But even, with your expertise, with doing Hilton Head and whatever, using that and not holding your feet to the fire, what does your gut tell you based on what you see? That would be of interest to me, and again, not expecting, it's not absolute science, but it would be interesting because you are doing this year-round, you're experts in it, and we need to get a snapshot if we're going to make recommendations going forward. So whatever you can do, I would love to see, not just the numbers, but your interpretation of the numbers. I think even if they're opinions, they will be valued.
Mike,
Sure.
Sorry, go ahead.
I'd just like to add, since we last met, I met with the president of the Chamber of Commerce of Isle of Palms, and I also met with Terry Hack, who don't really know Terry's title, but she's like the managing director of the Wild Dunes Resort. I asked both of them, I wanted to get the conversation started with this kind of, with these questions that we have. And I started with just asking if they could provide information on where our visitors are coming from. I didn't ask for any satisfaction questionnaire type thing, but I wanted to know, okay, let's start with where are our visitors coming from. The Chamber was not able to help us in any regard with that. However, Terry Hack was extraordinarily helpful. And within a week of meeting with her, she had a report for me of what municipalities or what population centers they're drawing their visitors from. Now, it was a lot of information, and I didn't really understand exactly what I was looking at. So I've been sitting on it, waiting for this meeting to happen. And I actually haven't given Terry any feedback on it because I didn't know where we were going with the whole thing. But there is a willingness on Wild Dunes' part, at least Terry Hack's part, of cooperating with us with our request for information. And then, I'm telling you, we're not looking for anything proprietary. We're not looking for contact information for your guests or anything like that. We just want to know generically information that would help us to know that where we should be concentrating our resources in terms of regions that are drawing a tourist to the island. So just so everyone else knows that
when we combine those synergies,
that's out there.
that's it. Yeah, I like that.
So that's a great jump up. I wanted to create just one clarification, make sure, Mike, we're talking about the same thing when we talk about data. Because I'm kind of tracking three paths. We have performance data, which is what I was referencing, right? Those are the numbers of how the market is done from an occupancy and an ADR standpoint, for example. And I think you're interested in some of that, but really, as I understand the conversation last time, and certainly to what you're sharing, right, is that it's about understanding origin, right, to the extent we can. And then the third piece would be, so visitor origin would be number 2, which hasn't been in those quarterly reports, but we're continuing to look at all of our available resources to see if there's anything we can glean that doesn't have to come from an owner or an operator. And then the third piece would be visitor insights, which is more of the survey tool that we're talking about engaging DOTA on, of which origin would be one component of that.
The insights are going to drive us going forward. That's the money.
Those, I just want to clarify the three pieces.
I agree.
Okay. So.
Yeah, and well, that's the perfect segue into sort of that was my first big question for all of you, which is, what is it that you really want to learn from this? What are the insights, as Chris said, that you guys want to get out? I know Desiree alluded to, I think it was like getting repeat visitors. Origin, for example, a survey isn't really designed to get at origin, even if we might be asking that, but because you're just getting a sample, if you're asking about, you mentioned satisfaction, that's the sort of thing you can start to gauge well in a survey. Origin a little, but there's, as Chris said, there's probably other tools that can answer that question more. So I would say, what are the questions about your visitors and their experiences here, or what are you most interested in learning? Would be my question to you all.
I think from my vantage point is, where did you come from? How did you hear about us to some regard? Why did you come? And then what would it take for you to come back? So I think those insights are what's important to create that sort of circle of, it's a storyline, right? And so to have that circle of life to say, would you come back? And if so, why would you come back? Or if you wouldn't come back, why would you not come back? What was your experience that we can address as a community to make it more attractive for you to come back?
Okay, excellent. And-
I would add to that, what can we do to improve?
Sure.
If they, are coming back or not, what would they like to see improved? What insight can they provide us that might help us provide city council with recommendations on, hey, you know what? We didn't think this was key, but it is key, so we may need to invest in that going forward.
I also think it would be, we're trying to figure out who our target customer is,
Mm-hmm.
right? Who is our target visitor, so we can then go and target market better.
Yes.
I think we're doing a great job, but I think we can do a lot better, but we're not understanding who they are yet, the demographics. Where they're coming from, I think that's important, but it's not as important as who it really is and what's the economic impact of them.
And that would dictate the approach and the message. I can tell you who, rents our home, but, they may be totally different with other properties and whatever. So those are all good questions.
And you've got the whole storyline between an Airbnb versus one of the front beach houses that has 12 bedrooms versus people that stay at the Wild Dunes. So I think within that, there's probably subsegments, and there could be demographics tied to those that might be of interest. Do we want to push more in one direction rather than another direction? If you see a consistently that Airbnb folks aren't happy with their experience here, is that something the island can really control? Because that's really kind of almost outside of our purveyance if they have a bad experience with the place they stay in. So I just think there's a lot. I mean, you could probably slice and dice this thing until you're blue in the face.
Sure.
But I think that knowing why people come and why they would come back to me, is the core fundamental there.
If I may, sorry, this is kind of off the back. I think that's a great point to make, because I want to make sure to maximize the resources that they can provide. We do have to be mindful of it making a digestible survey, right? Or we will lose people and then the response rate will suffer. So the line where we stop at satisfaction and focus more on, better understanding the visitor and visitor behavior, if you will, is an important one, I would say, for the committee to consider, for the very reason that you said, things that the city may impact from a satisfaction perspective, perhaps, has some merit here, but on the individual property and that experience, I don't think that's what will maximize the survey in this context. And also, I think it kind of extends beyond where it can help inform our work, if that makes sense.
Unless they're just macro trends maybe that you see, that's like consistently we see that this group is unhappy with this facility or this type of facility, but I wouldn't drill it down to an individual location. That wouldn't be fair to the location.
Yeah. Because we should say that from a process standpoint, there is well, let's just discuss process real quick if we may, because this is important. The survey, we want to support it in such that it is actually, let's say, housed on the OTA site. So they'll help design it, you all will approve it. They'll then create a link which the property manager, and we decided in one of our pre-calls that focusing in on the property for the vacation rentals makes a little more sense out of the gate, because, and we're going to happily talk to the hotels, but there's a great chance that they already have a survey in place, and we have to think about how that works. Plus, that's a whole different audience and process. So if we stick with vacation rentals, each property manager, owner, company, whatever they may be, whether they have 100 units or one, would then have a specific code that they send to their guests. All of that process would occur from the property owner, manager, et cetera, to the guest, instead of it coming through the OTA or the CPB in any way. So I just want to make sure we have complete clarity there. The reason is we're going to need your help championing with these, and we've talked to Desiree, the city's help, committee's help, championing that these managers participate. Otherwise, it's like any survey. You don't have good data, you don't have much actionable information.
Do you have case studies, or do you guys have case studies or white papers that would demonstrate another municipality that has kind of gone down this same path and what results? I mean, that to me is the argument. If this worked for Hilton Head or this worked for Kiowa, or this is the results for these municipalities, then would it work for us? And because if it's low participation rates, illegible feedback, those types of things, then they're not going to buy in. But if we can show a case study for, we've learned and we've grown because of them, then I think there's value there.
Sure, so, yes, so, what Chris mentioned is sort of the biggest challenge with this, which is getting the surveys out. So there's the response rate, right, getting people to respond, which obviously not everyone's gonna respond, and that's just life. But from my experience, the biggest challenge, and as soon as sort of Chris brought this to my attention, was like, okay, the rub is gonna be getting the cooperation, assuming that's the plan, to help with distribution. So as an answer to your question, no, I don't have like white papers or anything like that, but we have experience sort of using different methods. So I can tell you, back in the day in Charleston, we used to do intercepts, like literally just having students on the street going up and accosting people to get them to complete a survey. Now things have changed, so now we use email addresses that the CBB collects as people request the visitor guide and other materials, and then we can use those emails to reach out to people. In Hilton Head, we do something similar. We also post stuff on, post the survey link on their social media channels, and we've had some success with that. So there's different ways to do it, each of which sort of can have different advantages and disadvantages. Sort of from how it was described to me and how it sort of makes sense to me for a destination like Isle of Palms, I was thinking, oh, we're probably gonna end up doing something related to having some of the property managers helping us distribute this. For example, I didn't mention, but we've wrapped up doing a survey recently with DNR, with boaters, and we did something similar. So the boaters would stay in the different marinas, and then they were given a survey a little bit after they left. So it does work, but the challenge is getting, in that case, the marinas, in this case, the property managers on board to assist. That is the biggest challenge that we're gonna face. I can just tell you right off the bat. And so it sort of comes down to get the numbers we're gonna want, you're gonna need the scale of the big property managers, right? I mean, if we can get the people who are, whatever, Airbnb-ing one or two houses, that's great, but they just don't have enough guests to make a huge difference. So assuming that's the path we want to go, which I think makes the most sense given, again, the nature of Isle of Palms, the question is, do you all think you have the ability to sort of get enough folks on board to help us out? Because then we would end up doing something like, at the end of every month, they would need to send it out or provide the email addresses and so on and so forth, something of that nature. But we would need their cooperation.
Based on your experience, does an incentive work for those property managers? Whether it's a getaway or dinner at Halls or whatever, I mean, how do we engage them to make them and make them want to go that extra mile?
So an incentive definitely makes sense and is something I was gonna mention, but that's more for the respondents themselves, so the visitors.
Yeah, yeah.
I think, that's a little bit further down the line. We don't need to really get into the weeds with that today, but it does help
Right.
if you're just trying to get the random, mom or dad who brought their family here or what have you to answer the survey. Absolutely. An incentive could be useful. We've never done one, and I've personally never done one to get sort of the other participating entities on board. In some ways, it's the opposite, actually often helps, which is having them pay. Because once they've paid and they have some skin in the game, then they feel some vested interest in making it successful. Whereas when it's just, hey, we're gonna do this and help you guys out for free, hey, by the way, can you help us out by setting this out, then it can sort of get lost in the shuffle. So, I don't know, it's not something I've done before, but it would be something to consider.
I think the incentive almost is they get the report back. Here's your customer. This is where you want.
And grow their business.
Well,
Yeah,
that's-
exactly.
If I own the business, I'm all in. If I'm
It's a
the
free
property manager
service.
and you're adding to my to-do list,
Yeah,
I want a dinner calls.
And that's where I thank you. I think that's key, Mike, and I'm going back to the last meeting where this idea, I think that was the genesis of the idea, was what can we control? What can we help you influence, right? Which is how we're talking from a destination marketing. And I would say also, anytime we better understand our visitor, it also informs our destination management work. So that's a wonderful byproduct of this as well. But from a marketing standpoint, I think we do need to keep it higher level in order to, again, focus on the things which are more manageable as we trial this, because we've committed to a year, of giving this a go. So we're not going to start for a quarter and then just abandon ship. But also, let's come back with data that's then actionable. And to the point we can help you on that, I think we have to think about, again, those marketing and perhaps some management considerations. The other piece from a process standpoint, and Desiree, I want to make sure it's here. I think we do need to walk away today with a understanding that we're going to go down the path, Mike, that you recommended, which is that the owners do send it out. And again, it's just going to be an email link. They can have a nice little form letter they put in there. I think it can be however that owner likes to engage their guests. We could do some general, preamble, but the more you can engage them as they normally are communicated with, that's great. And you put that link in there. We are going to get into a lot of logistical issues that's going to slow this down if we try to get the OTA all these email addresses, because you're getting into a whole ownership of personal information quagmire there. So we have dozens of property management companies on the island. I don't think we want to go down the path of the OTA distributing these. Is that fair for us to agree that that's still?
We gotta start somewhere.
Yeah, okay.
And we gotta commit. This is not like you said, 1 quarter, 1 year. This is, we're gonna have to stay ahead of this going forward. The marketplace has changed and we've already seen a little decline. There's more properties on the island. There's a whole lot of dynamics going on. So I think we need this kind of information going forward.
Excellent, yes, so my recommendation would be for you all to start beginning those conversations with the people that be, whoever are in those roles in the bigger players in town to gauge their interest. Because at the end of the day, that's sort of critical, assuming we're gonna go down this pathway of that method, which again, I think is what makes the most sense. So yeah, that would be my recommendation, number one, is to bring them into the fold, convince them of the value of this, and make sure they're truly interested and not just saying, yeah, that sounds great, because it's easy to say, but that they're genuinely interested and genuinely willing to collaborate on this.
But the timing's perfect. If the average property is probably down 11, 12%, is that about right this summer?
Yeah, I'm going off memory, but yes, everything has trended down year over year from 21 to 22 to 23 and into 24. So we're still ahead of 19, but yes, year over year, we're seeing a pullback.
is that just Isle of Palms or is that?
No, that's Yeah, and I'm happy at
Yeah.
another time to get into the
No.
trends, because there's a lot there.
It's not even just our area.
It's not even just our
Yeah.
area. We're looking at that from a hotel perspective and vacation rentals. What we're always watching is, are we, operating beyond, the industry averages for the southeast or even the nation? And we're not there. And actually, our ADR is holding, which is great. So as the town thinks about revenue, that's an important consideration too, because there's a balance there where some of your loss in occupancy is offset by increased revenue. But at the end of the day, we know owners are looking for the consistency and hopefully growth in occupancy.
So,
Thank you.
Chair Ray, in terms of next steps, you and I can have a meeting with the Chamber of Commerce and maybe pull some of the bigger property manager companies, representatives from those property management companies, and have a conversation about the goal of this
Right.
survey and get some buy-in, certainly invite them to a follow-up meeting. And on next steps from your perspective with OTA, what would that look like, Chris?
So, well, and just to jump in those discussions, again, I imagine we would end up with something like Melinda would be sending, as Chris alluded to, as he described, sort of a personalized link to all the participating entities. And then they would be expected to send that out roughly once a month, I would say, to get on some sort of cadence, and also because you don't want the visitor coming in June and then we're reaching out to them in October. They've forgotten everything. So, they're not gonna be doing it every week, but something like every month. And again, my suggestion in those conversations is just to really feel them out and make sure they're genuinely into it and not just sort of saying, not just nodding their head because it's the path of least resistance. Okay, so for process, in terms of putting the survey together, the way that generally works is, we have a lot, sort of a bank of typical questions that we use. So now that I have sort of some idea of sort of what you guys are most interested in, we can start drafting something. And then the way it'll work is it'll just sort of bounce back and forth between you all and us, as we send a draft to you, and then you revise it and say, this doesn't sound right, or, you know more about Isle of Palms, of course, than we do. So, we need to add this, we need to reword this, or what have you. So we'll want all of your advice on that, and that'll just sort of be the back and forth. The other thing, another big point I wanted to bring up is it will work best for us, and frankly for everybody, if there's a point person on your end. That's our primary liaison, so that, we're not getting revisions from person A and person B and person C, and they might even be different. It's much easier for us, of course, if, you all will collaborate and work together, and there may be times that we all get together, but really in the emailing back and forth, that there's one point of contact, whether that be Desiree or somebody on council or whoever. I'll, of course, leave that to you all, but I would suggest sort of thinking about who that might be.
I'd be happy to be that liaison between the committee and OTA.
Okay, sounds great.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Excellent. Any
Thank
other
you.
questions, or is that good?
No.
All right, thank you all.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you, Melinda.
Okay, the next item I'd like to discuss is the consideration of opening up a second round of funding for the remaining budgeted monies, which I think is $15,000.
Yes, sir.
For the grant applications for funding projects. And so we have $15,000 left. Last year, we opened it up for, I believe, a month in October for entities to submit applications for consideration for that remaining $15,000, which would have to be used during the first 6 months of calendar '25.
Question?
Sure.
We couldn't just
Hey,
roll that,
Ray,
Barb has a question, Mike.
we couldn't just roll that money into next year's amount?
That is another option. We can increase for next year, the allocation, it's historically been 50,000. We can increase it to 65 next year. I believe that there are some entities that are interested in applying for, if the committee decides to open it up again.
Yeah,
So that's
and-
up to you all.
Yeah, and it also, we might not approve them.
Correct, right.
And then I'd like to have the opportunity to roll it over if that's the case as well. So, Mike?
I cheated a little bit and went to ChatGPT and kind of asked, what the ATAX committee could do better. And so I would like to suggest, one, our job is to review and evaluate funding request and then make recommendations to municipal government. I'd like to pump the brakes a little and see if we can't get at least biannual meeting with the council to be sure we understand their overall goals and objectives and that we're aligned so that we're not randomly just picking based on a submission or something. I hope we could potentially be a little more strategic, still within the state laws and all that kind of good stuff. But I think there's a lot of good people in this room that want to help, and there just needs to be more contact and communication and discussion. And it's hard when we get an agenda and items, and the last time we got together was May 15th. And so it kind of loses momentum, and I think we're at a crucial point as an island, and as, again, ChatGPT told me what we need to do, and I want to try to help.
What is
whatever that is. So I would like, if possible, that before we spend anything, that maybe we sit down with city council and what's our DNA? What do we want to achieve? Is it focused, on short-term rentals? Is it short-term rentals hotels? Is it beautification of the island? Is it events? What is it?
I think that's
'Cause
up
right now,
for this committee.
Maybe you guys have it, I don't.
Well, I think this, yeah,
Sure, go right ahead.
that's sort of counterintuitive to me. I mean, we have a mission, people come in, good cherries, whatever it is, and we okay them, and then the city council, it's not for the city council to generate what ATAX committee is doing.
I could not hear you, I'm sorry.
Okay, I don't know if I can
I
remember.
would
saying-
recommend, Mike, we've distributed, I think at the beginning of the year, a copy of the guidelines that were adopted by this committee about, to use as a guide to evaluate and make recommendations for sponsorships and programs that enhance tourism activity. State law governs how and what the parameters of this committee are and what tourism-related expenditures are. They're very clearly defined, and that's the lens that this committee has to use when approving these. I would recommend a review of those guidelines. Certainly, the committee can make recommendations or changes to those. And ultimately, it's this committee who decides what the focus would be for tourism promotion. And that's why you all are tasked with reviewing the budget from the CBB for the use of the 30% for tourism promotion, and also the budget for the 65% for the city. But maybe that would be a good start. If it is.
I remember reading it, and I'm just telling you, as a resident and somebody who cares about the island, I feel disconnected from that and reading something that was put together. I kind of feel like the committee's asked to rubber stamp stuff that comes in. And I just would like to suggest we consider having more dialogue about things. And I think the conversation with College of Charleston and the OTA is a good start, that we're all trying to work together with the property managers and stuff. But I just think I just put it out there as something to consider. And it's what's on my mind and heart, that we can do some things differently that have been formatted. Whatever was in the rules, we change our rules and operating based on business conditions, and the business conditions have changed. And if we're just going to be, operating out of what was agreed on a year ago, 2 years ago, and not be flexible, I'm not sure that's in our best interest.
I think that maybe it makes sense, and I know we're getting close on time, Desiree, so I'm trying to be cognizant of
you.
that. But I think that the issue in my mind is we're having two separate conversations. We're talking about the $15,000 and doing that. I mean, I don't think there's any hesitation to do that, but I think what Mike is alluding to is more the macro level. And so I think that the workshop is in order for, like, I'm very new to the committee. Mike's, I think, joined when I did, right? And so to make sure we understand what our purveyance is, and I don't think it's the $50,000. I think it has more than that, and I think us gaining a deeper understanding of what levers this committee can pull, and then I think what Mike is saying is that what city council is expecting of us, Barb, not to, obviously, we're the ones that are supposed to give them recommendations, but what are we recommending, and what is the goal of the city? There's a lot of money in the pot that is being directed, and I think that we need to be, it would help me to be more clear on what our influence is. If it's just the $50,000, that's one thing. I think it's the whole thing, but where does that begin and end?
And that's something that the committee can decide. You know, we can have a retreat type meeting where it's a workshop, more focused on the bigger picture. It's certainly something that this committee we can help facilitate as well.
I think that would be great. I
On the
really do.
15,000, do you all want us to reopen that and bring it back before you in October for another round of consideration?
Do you need a motion for that?
No.
I think it's a great idea. Why not? I mean, the money's there, and it's not like it's a huge amount of money. I mean, we're not, it was already allocated for this purpose, so why not open it back up? And just because we didn't have any applicants earlier year,
Correct.
I think it's great. And if it doesn't work, you've already said we can roll it the next year, so there's no harm
That's
in
right.
foul.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you. I make a motion for adjournment?
We have another item on the agenda.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Who's going to lead the discussion on the T-shirt artwork?
Yes, so this is just very high level and an update. I hope you all have seen the notices that have come out through Sunny and through the media about the art design competition for the T-shirt. As you all know, since 2007, the city has had the free T-shirt program. If y'all are waiting for court, thank you. All right, I'm going to go real quick. The city has a free T-shirt program. It is funded through the state accommodation tax, so it's included in the budget that you review and recommend to council, where we purchase IOP T-shirts, and folks that come and stay on the island, they come in City Hall and pick it up. They fill out a form. And they receive one per family. If they want additional T-shirts, it's a cost of $10. Residents or other visitors can purchase it as well for $10. So we've had the same design for a while, and we felt like it would be a nice community project to open it up for local artists to submit artwork for the city to select one to highlight in a new T-shirt. So we've been working, Chandra and the record department team have been working on putting it together. It's been announced. The deadline for that art is September 12th. We have selected a group of community residents to review the art that is received and down select up to about 3 that they prefer. And those 3 designs will be presented to this advisory committee for you all to select the winning art. The goal would be to do an unveiling of the winning art at the last farmers market at the rec at end of October. And starting in January, we'll have a new T-shirt that will be part of the official T-shirt for the city. We are revamping also the form and the questionnaire, if you will, that we require people to fill in order to receive the free T-shirt. So we'll be bouncing off ideas from the OTA as they work on this new survey for managers. We'll make sure that it's consistent with that, but it will be another source of information that we would have to understand where folks are coming from. So that's what I wanted to, I know we mentioned it at a prior meeting that we were pursuing this initiative. At your next meeting, we will have on the agenda discussion and review of the designs, and hopefully you all hopefully it's an easy decision to pick a winning one for the T-shirt. That's all I have.
Do you want to set a meeting date?
Yeah. Oh, yes, certainly can. Would September 25th, the 18th, or the 25th? What
This
would
is for
work?
next entire committee.
For this committee,
Yeah.
yes, sir.
25th would be good.
You vote on the 23rd? Oh, so we'd have to be, it has to be the 25th. The committee, who is down selecting to 3, is meeting on the 23rd of September.
Okay.
So we would need to meet after that,
Okay. September 25th.
11 a.m. Perfect.
I make a motion for adjournment.